Look at this photograph. It was taken in 1941. The original print sits in a museum archive in British Columbia. It has been examined by journalists and photo analysts, and not one of them has ever found evidence of editing, manipulation, or forgery. So tell me, who is this man? He's wearing wraparound sunglasses that wouldn't be widely manufactured for decades. His printed sweater looks like something off a rack in 2005, and that camera in his hand. The style matches models that came later. He's one of 10 people who turned up exactly where and when they didn't belong. Some were caught in photographs, some were caught on film, and one of them was literally arrested by the police. A few of these I'll show you how to debunk in about 5 minutes. I won't hide that from you. But 2 or 3 of them, science still hasn't closed the book on. And number one came with a detail that nobody alive in the year 2000 should have known. Let's start the countdown. We're going to start with someone who didn't just get photographed, he got arrested. October 2017, Casper, Wyoming. It's a quiet Tuesday night at the local police station when an officer on the front desk notices something unusual walk through the door. A man, disheveled, clearly agitated, smelling strongly of alcohol, approaches the desk and makes a statement so bizarre that the officer actually writes it all down, verbatim. The man says his name is Bryant Johnson. He says he's from the year 2048. And he didn't come alone. He says he was sent on behalf of the future with a warning. According to Bryant, aliens are coming. The invasion is set to begin in 2018. He needs, and this is a direct quote from the police report, to speak with the president of the town. He also has an explanation for why he arrived in 2017 instead of 2018. He says the time jump was miscalibrated. The aliens helped get him here by filling his body with a specific substance to prepare him for the journey. That substance, he explains very seriously, was alcohol. Officers noted in their report that Bryant Johnson was cooperative, calm, and spoke with a strange kind of conviction, not like a panicking drunk man, but like someone reciting a mission briefing. That detail, multiple reporters picked up on it when the story hit Newsweek, Fox News, the AP, and HuffPost a few days later. But here's the honest part, because this channel doesn't hide the counter-evidence. His blood alcohol level was 0.136. That's nearly twice the legal limit in Wyoming. There is no alien invasion record for 2018, and Bryant Johnson has never come forward to explain the story since. Is Bryant Johnson a time traveler? Almost certainly not. But is he a fun way to start a list about people who showed up where they didn't belong? Absolutely, because the next man on this list wasn't drunk. He wasn't confused. He walked into a federal investigation and offered them a deal, exclusive knowledge from the future, and then he vanished from a locked prison cell without a trace. Early 2003, the US stock market is in freefall. The dot-com crash has wiped out trillions. Professional traders with decades of experience are hemorrhaging money. And then there's Andrew Carlssin. In the span of 2 weeks, this man executes 126 high-risk stock trades. Every single one of them is profitable. Starting with approximately $800, he walks away with more than $350 million. The SEC is immediately suspicious. The statistical odds of pulling off 126 consecutive successful high-risk trades, even with the best algorithms in the world, are so astronomically small that the term impossible gets used in early reports. When investigators bring him in for questioning, they expect the usual: a hedge fund insider, a leak, someone with access to information they shouldn't have. What they get instead is a man who says, calmly, with no apparent nervousness, that he's a time traveler from the year 2256. He explains it simply. Where he comes from, the 2003 market crash is as well known as any historical event. He traveled back specifically to test whether that knowledge could be turned into money. He says it was an experiment, but he doesn't stop there. He offers the investigators a deal. Let him go, let him return to 2256, and he will give them the cure for cancer. Not leads, not research. The cure. He never reveals where his time machine is. He gives no verifiable personal history. SEC investigators can find no record of Andrew Carlssin existing anywhere prior to the trades. Now, here is the honest part, and I mean this. The story of Andrew Carlssin was first reported in Weekly World News, a tabloid that also ran stories about Bigfoot endorsing presidential candidates. No SEC enforcement record for a Carlssin has ever been independently verified. Journalists who tried to follow the paper trail found it went nowhere. This is very likely a story that was invented, spread as fact, and has been recycled in time travel-proof videos for 20 years. So why is it on this list? Because it's the template. The Carlssin story is what a believable time traveler story looks like. It uses real institutions, real financial events, real stakes. Understanding why it works is how you start to spot which of the remaining cases actually hold up under pressure. And the next one? The next one comes with phone footage. Sweden, 2006. A man named Håkan Nordqvist comes home to find his kitchen sink is leaking. Standard household problem. He opens the cabinet beneath the sink to get to the pipes, and the cabinet keeps going. He says the space inside simply extended further than physically possible. He crawled in, following the tunnel until the darkness gave way to light, and he emerged somewhere else. Somewhere. When else? On the other side, he claims, he met a man who introduced himself as Håkan Nordqvist, aged 70, in the year 2042. The older man held up his arm and showed him a tattoo the younger Håkan recognized because it was his own. Same design, same placement. And then, this is the detail that made this story travel around the world. Håkan did what any person with a camera phone would do in 2006. He filmed it. The footage exists. You can find it. It shows two men, side by side, seemingly at different ages, same features, same build, comparing the marking on their arms and laughing in a slightly unnerving way. Here is the counter-evidence, and it matters. This video surfaced in direct connection with a Swedish pension company's marketing campaign, encouraging people to think about their future self. Nordqvist has acknowledged the commercial context. The footage is extremely easy to produce with 2 actors or careful staging. But here's what stays with me. Nordqvist never backed down. He was never caught in a contradiction in any interview, and the footage, hoax or not, pulls at something genuine. The idea that the person you will become is already out there somewhere, already living the consequences of the choices you're making today. That is either beautiful or terrifying. Probably both. His proof was a shaky phone video. The next case is nearly 100 years old, and it's captured on professional cinema film. 1928, Hollywood. Charlie Chaplin's film The Circus is premiering at Mann's Chinese Theater, and Universal Studios cameras are rolling on the crowd, capturing the spectacle of early Hollywood celebrity culture for behind-the-scenes footage. This footage sat in an archive for over 80 years, and then, in 2010, Irish filmmaker George Clark was watching it on DVD. He hit pause, he rewound, he watched it again, and then he uploaded it to YouTube with a message that spread to CNN, ABC, Fox News, and BBC within 48 hours. Look at this woman, walking past the camera. She holds something dark and rectangular to her ear. Her mouth is moving. She appears to be speaking. She seems completely absorbed in a private conversation, oblivious to the cameras, oblivious to the spectacle of a Hollywood premiere unfolding around her. She is holding what looks, to any modern eye, like a mobile phone in 1928, decades before the first civilian mobile networks, decades before the transistor, at a time when telephones were connected to walls and required operators to connect your call. Millions of people watched the clip. The debate exploded. So what is the counter-explanation? The leading theory from audio historians is that she's holding a carbon amplifier, an early hearing aid manufactured by Siemens and others during this era. These devices existed, were handheld, and were sometimes held against the ear or jaw. It's a reasonable explanation, but here's where the mystery doesn't fully close. If it's a hearing aid, she appears to be speaking into it, not just listening. Her mouth moves. And in 1928, a device you spoke into as well as listened through? That's a harder thing to explain away. The other problem, if it were a mobile phone, who was she calling? There were no cell towers. There was no network, unless you assume she came from a time when those things existed and brought the device with her. That's the loop the debunk hasn't fully closed. Film can be misread. Footage can be blurry. But the next case is a single, sharp, confirmed authentic photograph, and the man in it is dressed like he walked out of 2001. Look at this photograph. We're back to where we started in the cold open, because this is actually the most important image in the entire video. Not because it's the most dramatic, but because of what it proves and doesn't prove. The photo was taken in 1941 at the reopening ceremony of the South Fork Bridge in Goldbridge, British Columbia. It's held in the Brylorn Pioneer Museum. In 2010, a Russian television crew, NTV, tracked down the museum, obtained access to the original print, and confirmed it was genuine, unedited, unaltered. The man is simply there. Now look at him. He's wearing what appears to be modern wraparound sunglasses, the kind you'd associate with the late 20th century. His sweater has a printed graphic on it, not the plain woolen patterns typical of 1940s rural Canada. He holds a compact camera that looks nothing like the bulky box cameras most photographers used at the time. The internet named him the Time Traveler. He became one of the most shared photos online. Here is what Snopes and photo historians found when they actually investigated. Wraparound style tinted glasses? They existed in the 1930s and 40s, manufactured for welders and people with light sensitivity. Printed graphic sweaters? Novelty knitwear with logos existed by the late 30s. Compact cameras? The Argus C3, a small, modern-looking camera, was released in 1939 and was extremely popular in North America. Every single item on this man can be sourced from a 1940s catalog. So he's probably just a man who happened to have good taste ahead of his time. But here's the thing I want you to hold on to. We looked at this photograph and immediately, instinctively, we felt something was wrong. That instinct is worth examining, because later in this video, you're going to see a case where the same instinct fires, but the explanation doesn't land as cleanly. Every item this man was wearing had an ordinary explanation in 1941. Not every anomaly in this list will be that easy to close. The next case involves a senior military officer, a clear sky flight over Scotland, and details that came true years later. May 1935, Scotland. Sir Victor Goddard is an experienced officer in the Royal Air Force, not a nervous rookie, not someone prone to fantasy. He's flying a Hawker Hart biplane over the Scottish countryside when he decides to detour over an airfield he knows well, RAF Drem, near Edinburgh. The field has been decommissioned. He's seen it recently, overgrown, abandoned, the hangars falling to pieces. Just another relic the RAF has left behind. He flies through a violent, sudden storm. Rain hammers the cockpit. He fights for control. And then he breaks through into clear air and looks down at Drem. The field is rebuilt, active. There are planes on the runway, 4 of them, in a distinctive yellow color. The RAF at that time painted its trainer aircraft silver, not yellow. There are mechanics moving around the aircraft below. They're wearing blue overalls. In 1935, RAF mechanics wore brown overalls. Goddard watched this for several seconds, clear skies, full visibility, no chance of misidentification, and then flew back into the storm. When he emerged on the other side, Drem was abandoned again. Derelict. Just as it should have been. He told almost no one for years. This wasn't a man looking for attention. But here's what happened next. 4 years later, in 1939, RAF Drem was reactivated. The RAF switched its trainer aircraft to yellow, a new safety regulation. Mechanics were given new blue uniforms. Every detail Goddard had seen in 1935 matched exactly what Drem looked like in 1939. Goddard eventually told the story publicly. He wrote about it. It was credible enough that it became the basis for a 1955 British film, The Night My Number Came Up. Now, the counter-argument. Goddard was recounting a decades-old memory by the time he wrote about it in detail. Human memory is extraordinarily good at reshaping itself around outcomes. The changes to RAF Drem were not secret. Some of them may have been anticipated in aviation circles he moved in. It's possible, not certain, but possible, that he remembered his 1935 flight through the lens of what Drem became. But here's the problem with that. Goddard mentioned the detail about the yellow aircraft to colleagues in 1935, before the color change. Multiple people attested to that. One trained, sober witness. One strange afternoon. One detail he told people before it came true. The next case had 2 witnesses and they wrote a book. August 10, 1901. 2 English women are visiting the Palace of Versailles, not tourists stumbling around. These are Anne Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, the principal and vice principal of St. Hugh's College, Oxford. Educated, rational, professionally accustomed to evidence and precision, they're wandering the grounds near the Petit Trianon, the smaller palace Marie Antoinette used as her private retreat. When something changes, they describe it starting as a mood, a strange heaviness, an oppressive flatness to the afternoon, as though the air itself had thickened. The colors of the garden seemed drained, and then they began to encounter people. A woman sitting in the grass, sketching, dressed in clothing that appeared to be from the late 18th century. 2 men in tricorn hats who gave them directions but seemed oddly expressionless. A bridge and a small kiosk in the gardens they could not find on any map of the Petit Trianon. A woman sitting on the grass near one of the outbuildings. Fair complexion, old-fashioned dress. The kind of face that stays with you. Moberly later said she believed this woman was Marie Antoinette, as she might have looked in the summer of 1789, the last summer before the Revolution. They didn't discuss what they'd experienced until weeks later, and when they compared notes independently, their accounts were almost exactly the same. A decade later, they published it as a book, an adventure, under the pen names Miss Morrison and Miss Lamont. It caused a sensation. Here is the most credible counter-argument. Later research uncovered that an eccentric aristocrat had, in the late 19th century, hosted elaborate costumed garden parties at Versailles, recreating the look and feel of 18th century court life, complete with period costumes and props. The kiosk Moberly described may have been a temporary structure used for such events. It's possible, maybe even likely, that the 2 women wandered into the tail end of a private historical recreation, and, colored by the strange atmosphere of the afternoon, misremembered the encounter as something more. But here is what the counter-argument still can't fully account for. The specific bridge they described wasn't part of any known party setup. The building with the woman, Moberly and Jourdain, didn't know enough about Versailles history at the time to have invented a plausible 1789 setting. Their accounts predate the research that eventually explained them. 2 intelligent, credible witnesses. Consistent, independent accounts. A published record that has never been fully explained away. They believed they had walked into the past. The next man on our list supposedly walked into our present out of 1876, and this one fooled the world for 30 years. If you've ever watched a time travel proof video before, you've almost certainly heard this story. 1920, Times Square, New York City. A man in Victorian clothing, mutton-chop sideburns, a top hat, a frock coat that belongs in 1880, materializes in the middle of a busy street. He looks around in confusion, and before anyone can speak to him, he's struck by a car and killed. When police examine his body, they find his pockets contain several pristine banknotes dated to the 1870s, unused, unaged. A bill from a livery stable dated 1876. A beer token from a saloon no one has heard of. Business cards printed for a man named Rudolph Fentz. NYPD Captain Hubert Vivey Ream, allegedly, begins investigating. He eventually tracks down a woman in the city who says her father-in-law, Rudolph Fentz, walked out of his house one evening in 1876 and was never seen again. The description, the age, the face, it all matches. Rudolph Fentz had stepped out in 1876 and stepped into 1950. This story has been cited in paranormal research books. It's been featured in documentaries. It's been shared millions of times online as one of the most convincing documented cases of time travel. There is one problem. It never happened. In 2000, a researcher named Chris Aubeck traced the story to its actual origin, a short science fiction story called I'm Scared, written by American author Jack Finney, published in Collier's magazine in 1951, 1 year after the event allegedly took place. The story was fiction. Every detail, the Victorian clothing, the beer token, Captain Ream, the 1876 disappearance, came from Jack Finney's imagination. At some point in the 1970s, someone retold the story as if it were fact. It was cited in a paranormal book. That book was cited in another. And for the next 50 years, Rudolph Fentz appeared in serious paranormal literature as a documented police case. No NYPD record of this case exists. No Captain Reams is listed on relevant rosters. No contemporary news coverage from 1950 has ever surfaced. I'm telling you this not to deflate the video, but because this is exactly how this topic works. A compelling story gets told once with enough specificity to feel real, and it becomes documented. The citations multiply. Nobody goes back to the source. Your skepticism is the point. Because in about 4 minutes, you're going to hear a case that went through the same scrutiny, the same, let's trace this back to its source process. And something was found that doesn't fit. Something that's harder to explain than a drunk man in Wyoming or a 1940s man with modern taste in sunglasses. But before we get there, we have one more case to cover. And this one involves a building that disappeared. (1979). Two English couples are driving from England to Spain for a summer holiday. It's a long drive, the kind where France becomes a blur of motorways and petrol stations. By the time they reach the Drôme region near Montélimar late at night, they're exhausted. They need a place to sleep. Every hotel in the area is full. They're about to push on when they see a building by the roadside, 2 stories, old but well-maintained. A sign above the door reads simply, "Hotel." No name, no star rating, no signage beyond that one word. They go in. The receptionist is friendly. They get a room immediately. And then, piece by piece, things begin to register as slightly off. The bed is unusually hard, the kind of firmness associated with old European lodging, not modern hospitality standards. There is no telephone in the room. The decor is plain, almost institutional. Out of curiosity, they take photographs: the hallway, the entrance, the exterior. At breakfast, they look properly at the other guests for the first time. Their clothing looks dated. Not costume dated, just old. Hairstyles that feel like they belong to a different decade. No one mentions current events, current television, current anything. The atmosphere has the quality of a room where time is not moving quite right. The bill, when they check out, 19 francs. Even for 1979, this was an absurdly low amount. They drive on to Spain, slightly puzzled but not alarmed. It's only on the return trip through France that one of them suggests, "Let's find that hotel again." They can't. They drive the route twice, 3 times. They stop at the exact location they remember. The building is not there, not closed, not demolished, not boarded up. The space where it stood is simply ordinary roadside landscape. They ask locals in Montélimar. Nobody knows of a hotel at that location. Nobody recognizes their description of the building. When they collect their developed film from the trip, the photographs from that hotel, the interior shots, the exterior, they don't exist. Not blurry, not dark, just gone. As if the camera hadn't captured anything at all. The 2 couples eventually gave accounts to researchers interested in what's now called time slip phenomena, the theorized experience of briefly sliding into an overlapping period. Their stories were consistent across multiple interviews, and neither couple had any apparent reason to fabricate. The counter-explanation here is straightforward. The hotel probably existed. Memory and stress can distort price perceptions. The photos may simply have failed to develop. On the return trip, they may have taken a slightly different route without realizing it. These are reasonable explanations. I won't hide them from you. But here is what they don't account for. 4 people. Consistent, detailed, cross-corroborated accounts. A bill they all remembered independently as unusually cheap. And the photographs, which should have captured something, even an empty hallway, that simply weren't there. Everything you've heard so far has had a counter-explanation. Some clean, some that leave a few loose threads. Number 1 is different. Number 1 has a thread that nobody has ever been able to pull closed, and it involves a document that was created in November of the year 2000 that should have been impossible to write. November 2nd, 2000. On an online forum called the Time Travel Institute, a new user creates an account. The username, timetravel_0. The post is quiet, specific, and strange. It says, "Greetings. I am a time traveler from the year 2036. I have been here since early 1998 and I will be leaving this year." Most people who read it assume it's a bit, a creative writing experiment, someone bored with too much internet access in the early days of the web. Then the replies start. Over the next 4 months, November 2000 through March 2001, the user, now calling himself John Titor, posts approximately 570 messages across multiple forums. He answers questions, he explains things. He contradicts himself occasionally on small details, but maintains a remarkable internal consistency on the specifics of his time travel technology and his mission. He says he is a U.S. Army soldier stationed in the Tampa, Florida area. In 2036, he was sent back, first to 1975, then forward to 2000, on a specific mission. The mission: to retrieve an IBM 5100 computer, not a prop, not a concept. A real machine from 1975, a rare, bulky, expensive portable computer. Titor explains in technical detail why a future military unit would need an obsolete piece of 1970s hardware. He says the IBM 5100 has a hidden capability that IBM never publicly documented: the ability to emulate older mainframe programming languages. A feature, he says, that would be critical to fixing a looming software crisis around 2038, similar to the Y2K problem, but involving Unix timestamps. He describes his time machine in unusual technical specificity: a C204 gravity distortion device, installed in a 1967 Chevrolet Corvette, using what he calls micro-singularities to distort local space-time. He posts photographs, grainy but specific. His forum posts include what he says are pages from the C204's technical manual. Now, most of John Titor's predictions failed. He described a devastating American Civil War breaking out after 2004. He predicted a nuclear conflict that would reshape global civilization by 2015. He said the 2004 Olympics would be the last. None of this happened. He pre-built a defense for this. He said every act of time travel creates a diverging timeline. His predictions apply to his version of history, not necessarily ours. So when they failed, he had an unfalsifiable escape hatch. That's a sign of a well-constructed hoax. And then we get to the IBM 5100. In 2004, after Titor had long since vanished from the internet, no farewell, no final post, just silence, an engineer named Bob Dubke came forward. Dubke had been part of the original IBM team that developed the 5100 in the mid-1970s. He confirmed something that had never been in any public IBM documentation. Not in any press release, not in any technical manual, not in any magazine review from the era. The IBM 5100 did have a hidden emulation capability. It could interpret older IBM mainframe code, a feature IBM deliberately kept off the record because they were concerned about it affecting sales of their larger systems. This feature was known internally to a small number of engineers. It was not known publicly. John Titor described this feature in technical terms in posts made in the year 2000. The engineer who helped build the machine confirmed the feature in 2004. The question that nobody has answered in 25 years is, where did John Titor get that information? The practical theories. A former IBM engineer created the Titor character as an elaborate creative project. Someone in the Orlando area, where some of the posts originated, had insider access to 1970s IBM development records. In 2009, a law firm in Florida, the Titor Foundation, claimed Titor had been a hoax and attempted to hold copyright over the story. But they never revealed who Titor actually was. The identity behind the posts has never been publicly confirmed. Titor's predictions were wrong. His escape hatch was too convenient. The whole thing has the fingerprints of a very smart, very patient hoax. But the IBM 5100 detail was real. It was obscure. It was non-public. And whoever John Titor was, they knew it in the year 2000. That is the detail that keeps the case file open, not because it proves time travel, but because it proves something. And after 25 years, no one has been able to say for certain what. 10 cases, Some of them, the drunk man in Wyoming, the stock trading legend, the Victorian man in Times Square, have clean explanations. I showed you every one of them, because that's the deal on this channel. Some of them, the RAF officer, the two women at Versailles, the woman at the Chaplin premiere, are harder to close. The explanations exist. They just don't quite reach all the way. And one of them, a man who claimed to be a soldier from 2036, posting on a dial-up internet forum in November of 2000, knew something that he shouldn't have been able to know, and we still don't know who he was. Here is the question I want you to answer below, and I'm asking this honestly, not as a content prompt. If time travel were possible, not to change anything, not to interfere, just to be there for a moment, 1 year, one place, one person you'd want to see again, where would you go? I'll put my own answer in the comments. I'm curious what yours is. If this is the kind of rabbit hole you want to keep going down, I'd start with the next video, because there are cases on that list that make John Titor look straightforward. I'll see you in the next case file.